Christian is beside me, stretched out on a sun lounge. My husband, my hot, beautiful husband, shirtless and in cut-off jeans, is reading a book predicting the collapse of the Western banking system. I flush. I didn't get much sleep last night.
Me neither.
He grins, puts down his BlackBerry and stands. His shorts fall a little and hang in that way so his swim trunks are visible beneath.
Mr. Gray will see you now. 50 Shades Freed is a 2018 film directed by James Foley, written by Nell Leonard, adapted from the 2012 novel of the same name, written by television executive Erica Mitchell under the pen name E.L. James. Originally published online as Twilight fan fiction between August 2010 and May 2011 under the title Master of the Universe 2, Freed is unique in the series in that it is the only chunk of the trilogy that was somewhat conceived as a finite story with publication in mind. By January of 2011, about halfway through Master of the Universe 2's writing, Mitchell had reached an agreement with Australian publisher The Writer's Coffee Shop, and the process of editing Master of the Universe Part 1 into 50 Shades of Grey and 50 Shades Darker had begun. This would be publicly announced at the end of the March 5th installment of Master of the Universe 2 in conjunction with the online version of more or less everything up to that point being pulled from fanfiction.net and 50shades.com.
I have some exciting news. Well, exciting for me. I've been given the opportunity to publish this beast by TWCS, so I am going ahead and doing that. The first book, yes, there's more than one. It's so long, as you know. Will be out at the end of May. I have pulled everything except the last few chapters of MOTU 2. I know a great deal of you will be delighted for me, and some less so. You must tell me what you want, if you are still speaking to me.
I was actually able to find a copy of Master of the Universe 2 with the blog notes still intact, which makes for a fascinating read, injecting the context of public performance back into the text. Like, it's wild to see that at the exact moment publication was assured, every outstanding plot thread is either dropped or resolved. The entire main plot is resolved in the next chapter after the announcement, and the 3 after that are mostly various characters explaining things to Bella and backfilling the majority of the plot holes. And you'll be happy to know that the legacy of 50 Shades Freed as a hastily written fill-in has been preserved in the film version. Sadly, they didn't preserve the parts where the American characters talk like a middle-aged English woman.
He smirks.
Eat.
He orders.
You didn't eat yesterday.
Oh, bossy 50. That's because you were being an arse. Mrs. Jones drops something that clatters into the sink, making me jump. Christian seems oblivious to the noise. Ignoring her, he stares at me impassively.
Arse or not, eat.
His tone is serious. No arguing with him.
Now, the main history of 50 Shades that I relayed in the first video focused entirely on the pedigree of the films, the chain of adaptation, but let's take a minute to talk about the parallel history to that. In early 2012, as the deal with Vintage was materializing, Mitchell tried to erase the history of 50 Shades from the internet. The remaining content on 50shades.com was deleted and replaced with a stock author bio light blog. Takedown notifications were issued to various blogs that had syndicated the fanfic, and Erica's lawyers contacted the Internet Archive and had both 50shades.com and the relevant pages on fanfiction.net removed from the archive listing. Not only did this eliminate the most obvious copies of the fic, but effectively wiped out a tremendous amount of the parallel discussions that are now left to only be relayed by word of mouth. Assembling the timeline of basic events like when was the first chapter posted to fanfiction.net, or when were the books first published, was surprisingly difficult for something that happened only 8 years ago. The information is crumbling, some lost to digital decay and some to deliberate obfuscation. The history of 50 Shades has effectively become folklore, and folklore is a delicate thing. In interviews following publication, Mitchell would tell a few different variant stories about the origin of 50 Shades, generally downplaying or outright denying the fanfiction origins of the story. Even up through 2017, the go-to narrative was this muddled sort of half-truth about how she wrote a Twilight fanfiction and then wrote another story that would go on to inspire 50 Shades of Grey.
I read about something called fanfiction. I didn't know what fanfiction was. I thought, well, this is interesting, and I looked up and I decided to have a go myself. And so I wrote a novel, a 70,000-word novel in 3 weeks. And while I was doing that, I had the idea for what became 50 Shades.
Now, it's sort of a weird half-truth because there is another fanfic. Before 50 Shades of Grey, before Master of the Universe, there was Safe Haven by SnowQueen's IceDragon. Edward Cullen is filming his new movie in Las Vegas. His only solace is Bella, who lives and works in the luxury hotel he is staying, but is she all she seems? Explicit adult content. It's not entirely clear which strictly came first, but Safe Haven was the first fanfiction posted to fanfiction.net under the handle SnowQueen's IceDragon, and it is functionally a 143-page prototype of Master of the Universe told from Edward's perspective. The obsession with Audi, the classical music, the way Bella is a virgin who has never so much as had an impure thought before Edward comes along, the pervasive misogyny, and the fact that it's really just a loose retelling of Twilight, hitting most of the same major plot beats. It's revealing because it sets out patterns in Mitchell's writing that can be seen repeating throughout the rest of her work, elements that remain fixed in place even after edits or adaptations. The critical one being this: Anna is not the self-insert of 50 Shades, Christian is. This is part of why I find Safe Haven fascinating. The first fanfic wasn't Bella's point of view, it was Edward's, an Edward that is controlling, demanding, petty, and easily angered. Through adaptation, through mutation from Edward to Christian, these are the personality traits that stay intact. The screenwriter is replaced and given a mandate to preserve the accuracy of the books. And what's the thing that survives the process? Dumbass arguments about an email address where Christian uses his power to get pointless concessions out of people in a way that improves nothing but makes him happy because now people are doing his bidding.
I tried emailing you. It bounced.
We talked a bunch in the last video about how Erica pretty much hijacked the production, but I didn't really talk about how. The leverage that she kept using on the set of the first film was that if any change displeased her too much, she would withdraw support and tell all her fans to boycott the movie, which, in the context of a film like 50 Shades, is pretty much death. It's the kind of movie that relies very heavily on fans to be the backbone, to be the word of mouth, more than on a general audience just going to see it because it looks cool. Marketing-wise, it was 100% banking on being the movie version of a cultural phenomenon as opposed to the adaptation of a good story. With this in mind, it ends up being really fascinating when you watch the behind-the-scenes extras for Darker, and the selling point of the new writer and director, Nell Leonard and James Foley, is they get along with Erica.
He's incredibly experienced, and he has a very impressive roster of great films under him. And we met and we just hit it off.
And Nell, who's actually Erica's husband, did the adaptation, which I thought was a good thing for us as producers because he lived with these books and the process of these books being written.
He did a really fantastic job of boiling everything down so that we got all the main set pieces and fan moments that would be expected. He kind of went off and did his thing, and then he'd bring me a draft and say, what do you think? And I'd go, oh, this, and we're still speaking to each other, so I think that's probably a good thing.
And just from watching the on-set interactions and all this material and how Erica's pretty much just directing the movie, it's obvious that Mitchell threatened Universal that she would take her ball and go home, so they found her a proxy writer in her husband and a proxy director in James Foley. It's also fascinating how Gray's behind-the-scenes stuff spends a lot of time talking with Johnson and Dornan about the sex scenes, and both of them relay at length how much trust they put in director Sam Taylor Johnson, how much work she put into helping them find a headspace they could be in and work in, and then for the second and third movies, they're out on the press junket talking about doing whiskey shots to get through the sex scenes.
Do you guys have a pre-game ritual before these scenes?
Got a whiskey, mints. Yeah. He does push-ups, and I just lay there and drink whiskey.
On the lighter side of that subject, I'm pretty sure I can identify the first scene where Dakota Johnson was drinking to get through the day, and it's the topless boat scene from Darker. The tell to me is that Dakota Johnson just seems kind of drunk.
Who did this to you?
So one of the things that really stood out to me as I was getting into all of this, as I was researching and assembling this whole long project, was that with every pass I made over the movies, the differences became more and more clear. The level of craft put into the smaller things became more and more identifiable.
This is how we first see him, very structured, very businesslike. The next, he takes her on a small coffee date. It's still guarded with the vest protecting the heart area, but it's a little more open, and trying to be more of a regular guy, it's also worn with blue jeans. It's open, it's one level, it's a different color, and has a little flair of a pocket square. And so in subtle ways, we find him opening up and wrapping his mind around becoming part of her life.
Erica was very keen that movies 2 and 3 should stick as closely as possible to the books and to the sense of the books and to the sense of the story.
Freed is basically a low-budget James Bond knockoff. Like, if instead of having a whole bunch of wild gadgets, a car chase, a boat chase, and a fight on a helicopter, there was instead a gadget, a car going over the speed limit, a boat, and a fight. Anyway, the movie opens with a wedding montage, and already I want to stop and talk about the sickly green undertone that's being graded into this scene. So, green is very common in nature, but it's rare for the ambient light to be green. Green ambience is unnatural and off-putting, so using green as an undertone or even as an overtone is, in cinematic language, shorthand for a state that is unnatural, disconcerting, or wrong. It's why The Matrix is tinted green, why The Office in Joe vs. the Volcano is green, and why the first Twilight movie is pretty much entirely green until Bella decides to stay in Forks. Also, the fact that it is unnatural makes it a really obvious tell. If you're watching a movie and the lighting looks tinted green, it's because someone was mucking with it. It didn't just happen to look like that. Given that Freed is going to be more of a thriller, it makes sense that we're going to see green used as an undertone, and it makes sense that it would appear early in the film to set the mood. It makes sense when Jack Hyde is breaking into Grey Enterprise Holdings Incorporated to plant a firebomb in the server room, but it doesn't make sense for it to be used in a wedding scene when that wedding is supposed to be fairy tale beautiful, when this is supposed to be the emotional high before anything has had a chance to spoil it. And as a visual shorthand, its use is really inconsistent. Some relevant scenes have it, some don't, and there's nowhere else in the movie where it's as pervasive as it is in the wedding. Alright, so we're 30 seconds into the film, and I've already gone on for a minute about color. Cool. Anyway, the rest of the title montage is all honeymoon stuff in Paris, and things finally settle on the beach with Anna asking Christian to apply more sunscreen.
You put this on my back. Take off the whole thing.
Not a chance. You're showing plenty as it is.
I am wearing more than any woman here.
You want to be ogled by every guy in the beach?
To my disappointment, they decided to skip on the literal adaptation of Christian Grey, image-conscious billionaire, lounging at the beach in cut-off jeans over swim trunks. Ladies. But Christian leaves Anna to have a swim, and Anna removes the rest of her top anyway. Cutting away from that, a mysterious stranger gets into Christian's office tower, changes into a disguise, hacks the electronic lock on the server room, and then plants a bomb. Wait for it. Christian and Anna argue again about Anna taking her top off, and Christian finally reminds her that there might be paparazzi around, continuing the fine tradition of Christian always being justified for pushing Anna around. See, it's just like when he pulled her out of the way of the bike.
What is that even? Watch it!
Then the argument ends and they go back to the boat and have sex. Christian's assistant Roz calls and informs them that the bomb did indeed finally go off. It totally exploded, over there, off screen. Just made a real mess of things. Totally fried the servers. Lots of damage. Really, really expensive damage over there. Anyway, it's Jack Hyde.
Oh my god, that's Jack.
Oh, and also the helicopter crash was totally sabotage, and that was also Jack Hyde.
I got a report from the FAA. They don't think that the helicopter crash was an accident. They said it looks like sabotage.
Jack Hyde, fiction editor, sabotaged Christian's helicopter. The day after Jack Hyde, fiction editor, was fired from his job as fiction editor, Jack Hyde, fiction editor, sabotaged a helicopter. Anna and Christian cut their honeymoon short, go home, meet the new security guards Christian has hired, and get into a petty argument about having children, starting one of the major threads for the movie. Don't worry, it gets worse. Anna goes to work where she finds out that while she was gone on her honeymoon, her temporary promotion has been made permanent and the office was renovated, and Liz is pretty obviously resentful of the whole situation. I mean, yeah. By the way, Liz is the head of human resources at SIP, who you might remember from the last movie as the woman who clearly knew Jack was bad news, but still encouraged Anna to spend time with him in a social capacity. Anna's assistant, Hannah, comes in and the two talk about changing Anna's email address from Anastasia Steele to Anastasia Gray, and Anna just says, you know what, leave it for now. The scene wraps up and cuts to Anna taking a meeting with her biggest client, Boyce Fox, when Christian comes storming into the office, demands to speak with Anna immediately, insinuates that she's cheating with her client, then throws a fit because he tried to send an email to Anastasia Gray at publishingcompany.com, and it bounced.
I tried emailing you. It bounced. There's no Anastasia Gray at SIP.
And we're going to talk about lighting. Now, this whole point is incredibly petty, but the fact that they didn't relight the set between the two scenes is what really elevates it to comedy for me. It isn't just later the same day, it's basically immediately. Anna goes to work, the sun streaming through her windows, and before she's even taken a coffee break, Christian is standing in her office demanding to know if their marriage is a sham because she has been back to work for 45 minutes already and hasn't yet changed her email address. To this compelling argument, Anna caves pretty much instantly because she has at this point more or less accepted that her life largely consists of managing Christian's emotions for him, and his face lights up with just the most punchable grin. Just a reminder, this isn't even an argument about her changing her legal name, it's purely about her changing her professional name and her email address. Also, it will never come up again. There is no future complication as a result of changing email addresses, and it doesn't even become petty ammunition in a future argument. Anna says she'll think about it. Christian's like, yay, I bullied my wife into giving me a petty win. And just like the bathing suit, it's never mentioned again. After work, Christian drives Anna out to the country and surprises her with a house. I didn't even mention this in the previous movie, but when Christian and Anna spent a day on his boat, Anna saw this house on the shore and was like, that's a nice house. I love that house. And now Christian is like, hey, I bought you this house that you like. And then Christian's architect comes in and is like, cool, so we're going to bulldoze the house. And Christian is like, yes, let's bulldoze the house that I bought for my wife because she said that she loves the house. If that sounds like bizarro whiplash, that's because it's set up for Anna's transformation into a wealth monster because the architect, Gia, is a blonde, and as we've discussed, blondes in 50 Shades are all homewreckers and temptresses, so Anna dresses her down for the vicarious enjoyment of Erica Mitchell, who hates women in general and blondes in specific. Oh, and this is a good place for a reminder that in the logic of the story, Christian hired Gia specifically because she's a blonde so that she wouldn't remind him of his dead mother, who he refers to as the crack whore, and thus he wouldn't feel compelled to beat her sexually in an act of displaced revenge. Anyway, Christian lets Anna drive home and they get in a car chase and then have sex in a parking lot. Back home, their security tells them the driver that was chasing them is a woman, then Anna finds Leela's gun, still loaded in Christian's desk drawer, and he promises to get rid of it.
I got rid of it.
A whole bunch of nothing happens until Anna goes out with Kate for drinks, even though Christian told her to go straight home, and then Anna gets home and Jack Hyde, who has broken into their apartment, attacks her with a kitchen knife and tries to kidnap her, but he's taken down by her new security guards.
Better restrain him.
I don't have anything. We do. I can find something.
All right, that line's kind of funny. Like it's funny on purpose. I like that line. It's funny on purpose. Also, because this detail is hilarious, I want to point out that in the book, this doesn't happen. Jack doesn't take Anna captive at knife point. Instead, Anna gets home from the bar, and the action is already resolved. Jack broke in while she was gone, and her security team has already incapacitated him. Everything exciting already happened off screen. See, that's what happens when you don't actually edit your fanfic before publishing it as a novel. Anna is talking with the police, who tell her that in Jack's stolen van, they found a note saying, "You owe me a life," and assure her that he's definitely not going to get out. All right, then there's 3 scenes where nothing really happens, but Christian isn't happy. Then Anna gets home from work and Christian takes her into the playroom where he tortures her with orgasm denial in revenge for saying she would go home, but then going out drinking with Kate, and it escalates to the point that Anna needs to use her safe word. Now, okay, there's a bit to unravel here. First, I'm going to refer back to what I said in the first part of this series. It's okay from a narrative perspective if Christian is a dick. It's just that the conflict that arises out of it needs to go somewhere. The issue is that despite the fact that Anna is the one who is being wronged here, the scene still pivots to be about Christian's man pain and explain why it is that he just can't stop abusing her. And with that violation of trust out of the way, the movie comes to a standstill for 15 minutes while Anna and the gang piss off to Aspen for the weekend. Wait. The bikini, the email address, the attempt at punishing her for going out with Kate despite the fact that she was attacked at knife point less than 24 hours earlier. It's almost like there's a pattern of Christian violating Anna's boundaries and then giving her extravagant gifts and or sex in lieu of apologizing. When they get back, Detective Clark tells Anna that Jack Hyde, the man who was caught on camera planting a bomb, stole a vehicle, and attempted to kidnap Anna at knife point, is probably going to get bail because he's saying that she came on to him first and he totally didn't try to molest her, so extenuating circumstances? Anna goes to the courthouse for his bail hearing, and sure enough, he gets bail, though the judge sets bail at $500,000 because it's his first offense. Or, well, his first slate of offenses, including criminal arson, grand theft auto, and attempted kidnapping, but who's keeping count? Anna immediately runs to the bathroom and throws up, then hard cut to the doctor's office where Anna's gynecologist tells her that whoopsie doodle, she's pregnant because she hasn't taken her birth control since the end of the last movie. At dinner, Anna tells Christian that she's pregnant, and Christian is like, "That's bad. I don't want a baby right now." And Anna is like, "I know it's bad. I don't want a baby right now either." And even though that makes it sound like the two of them are totally on the same page vis-a-vis this pregnancy, they just yell at each other instead. Christian storms off, eventually coming home in the middle of the night, piss drunk, where he slurs about his fear that Anna will choose the baby over him. As Anna is putting his stuff away, he gets a text from Elena saying, "Good to see you tonight. I'm here for you anytime," which sets Anna off, so she goes and sleeps in the playroom. The next morning, Christian is busy organizing the help into a search and rescue party when Anna comes downstairs. This begins a prolonged argument between the two, where Anna is naked for most of it. Like, it's just an entire scene of dialogue, and throughout, Anna is just naked. It's nudity that's pointless to the point it's honestly kind of surreal. All right, I don't know how to segue this because just saying it out loud makes it sound somehow even more abrupt than it actually is. But like an hour later, Anna gets a phone call from Mia, except it's Jack Hyde and he wants $5 million in ransom in 2 hours or he's going to kill Mia. So I don't know what Jack's exit strategy is here. He's out on bail for a bunch of really serious crimes, and Anna knows exactly who he is. So it's not like he's some anonymous dude who can grab a duffel bag full of money and just disappear. And he doesn't know this, but Christian doesn't actually like his family all that much. So killing Mia would maybe make Christian a bit sad, but mostly it's just going to add murder to Jack's already substantial list of crimes that he's already definitely going to prison for. I don't know. We'll talk more about Jack's plan later. In the meantime, Anna goes home, changes into her teenage runaway outfit, gets a duffel bag, the checkbook, and grabs Leela's gun, which Christian had promised to get rid of several weeks ago.
I got rid of it.
Hey, isn't it weird how whenever Anna breaks tiny, inconsequential promises like, "I'll come straight home after work," or "I won't take my top off on a topless beach," it's deemed worthy of derision and punishment? But when Christian breaks his promise to get rid of a loaded handgun that he keeps in an unlocked drawer in their home, it's fine because it totally turned out Anna needed a loaded handgun. Anyway, now that she's armed and dangerous, she gives Sawyer the slip and takes off for the bank. Fuck! At the bank, Anna, dressed in a hoodie and clearly in a hurry, asks to withdraw $5 million in cash from the joint account. Banks don't carry that much cash on hand, by the way, but just accept it or we'll be here all day. The bank manager, Troy Whalen, calls Christian to confirm the transaction, and Christian asks to speak to Anna in private. After their conversation, a sobbing Anna gives the phone back, and Christian tells Whalen to give her the money. Despite this being a situation built entirely out of red flags, Whalen gives her the cash and his phone and helps her take the money out the back door of the bank and load it into an SUV being driven by a person who looks like they're trying to look shady. Oh, and the driver is Liz, you know, the head of human resources at SIP. She's the one who got into the high-speed car chase through Seattle. So Christian has figured out that something's up and that Mia's missing, so he calls the cops and he's tracking Anna's cell phone, which she hid in the bag of money. So everyone's converging on the spot where Jack has Mia tied up. Jack beats Anna up and kicks her in the stomach, so oh no, pregnant. Then Anna shoots Jack and the police arrive, and that's it. The entire standoff resolves in about 45 seconds. From there, it's just a slow roll downhill to the end. Christian wants a baby now, and the baby's okay, and he hears all of Jack Hyde's motivations and stuff, sort of, I guess. Christian is shocked because he realizes that the only substantial difference between him and being a pervert middle manager is that he started off with millions of dollars and turned it into billions, but this rare moment of accurate self-assessment is undercut by Anna disagreeing.
If I'd been left in the system, who knows how I would have turned out.
You're a man of honor. And you treat people well.
I got rid of it. You're showing plenty as it is. I get off in punishing women who look like you.
Like your mother.
I tried emailing you. It bounced. There's no Anastasia Gray at SIP.
And you treat people well.
Turns out Jack and Christian were in the same foster home in Detroit, and Jack remembers and resents Christian, and we'll talk about this in a bit. We're almost done the movie. Anna and Christian visit the grave of Christian's birth mother, and he doesn't once call her the crack whore.
The crack whore used to let me play with her hair, I think. I don't know if it's a memory or a dream.
Whoa, his birth mom.
There's a montage of all the highlights from the trilogy, which is weird because it really just calls attention to the fact that nothing has really happened. Then the movie fake ends with Anna setting up the playroom, and it's the first time in the movies that Christian's ratty dom jeans have gotten any explicit attention rather than just being an environmental detail. So this loving close-up of Anna reverently laying them out on the bed is kind of comical. Christian comes in and remarks that Anna is topping from the bottom, a line that we're going to be talking about a lot in a bit, and fade to black for a few credits before an epilogue where everyone's happy and rich and Anna's pregnant with their second kid. The end. All right, get a drink. We'll be right back. This episode was brought to you by Tap Water. Good old municipal tap water. This is by far the most literal adaptation of the three, no doubt helped by Master of the Universe 2 being somewhat more self-contained and less of a sprawling catastrophe. There's a bunch of stuff, but the main one that I really want to talk about is that last line, because I've been wanting to talk about it since we started. It's this line from Christian to Anna: "I believe you're topping from the bottom." Flashback time. Mitchell also has an awkward habit of juxtaposing erotic imagery with infantilizing internal commentary from Anastasia. Anna is seemingly perpetually confused by the world around her and naive to the point of farce, a thread that persists all the way to the very end of the trilogy.
You know you're topping from the bottom.
He murmurs against my lips. What? I don't understand what he's talking about.
If you've been following along with the movies and you still find these characters to be insufferable and frustrating, that's fair, but I promise you, it doesn't hold a candle to the books. Mitchell as a writer is seemingly incapable of ever-changing characterization. All the way up to the final pages of the book, Anna is still utterly oblivious to the world that she has gotten herself into. So this change, having Anna implicitly acknowledge that she is, in fact, the one who's really in control here, I like it. I wish it were in a better movie. One of my favorite changes from the book, mostly because of how it contrasts the original, has to be the ending with Christian's mom's gravestone. Like, this is such a natural endpoint for Christian as a character. The book is even called 50 Shades Freed. Christian is 50 Shades. Anna calls him 50 constantly in her inner monologue, so the title of the book is Christian Grey Freed. It is the book where ostensibly Christian finally gets over his myriad problems and can be normal. Except he doesn't. Okay, so in Darker, at the midpoint of the book, remember, Christian has a major miraculous breakthrough where he no longer feels compelled to take out his psychosexual hang-ups on Anna, at least as far as physical violence is concerned, and he lets Anna touch him. So after that, the big hang-ups would be his need for petty control and his fear of parenthood, which is tied in with his resentment of his mother. All right, in this book, he resolves one of these, which is that he gets over his very specific hang-ups about being afraid the baby will split Anna's attention and she won't be able to devote all her energy to managing his emotions anymore. But he's still petty and controlling. Just look at the whole email argument and the sunbathing argument and the went out drinking with Kate argument. None of that comes back. None of it is resolved, and Christian never lets go of that problem. But it's the other one that's just baffling. The first time Christian refers to his mother in 50 Shades of Grey, he calls her a crack whore, and the last time he refers to her in 50 Shades Freed, he calls her the crack whore.
How do you feel about that? I whisper. He frowns.
About having no living relatives? Fuck that, if they were anything like the crack whore.
He shakes his head in disgust.
So why is it that the film version is able to see such an obvious bit of closure where the originals weren't? The answer is that Erica Mitchell just doesn't think that there's anything wrong with this framing, since Anna also refers to Christian's mother as the crack whore.
This is confusing. I'm his wife, not his submissive, not some company he's acquired. I'm not the crack whore who was his mother.
Change of pace. Let's disassemble Jack's plot in its entirety, and for that we're going to go all the way back to childhood. Jack Hyde spends his youth in the foster care system of Michigan. When he is 8 or 9, Christian is put into the same home as him for 2 months. At some point, Jack is adopted or simply ages out, but either way, he is able to attend Princeton, graduate, and move out to Seattle, where he gets a job as the fiction editor at a successful boutique publisher. He also becomes a sex pervert and rapist who molests his co-workers and keeps a log of sex tapes as leverage. Then, one day, he hires a new assistant named Anastasia Steele. At the end of her first week on the job, they go out to a bar where Jack meets her boyfriend, Christian Grey, which starts some wheels spinning in Jack's head. The next night, he infiltrates an exclusive charity dinner and auction in order to creep on Christian. The following Tuesday, Jack pins Anastasia against the door of his office and gropes her, then gets kneed in the balls and beat up by her boyfriend's security guard. Later that evening, he's fired because Christian has all but officially bought the company. 2 days later, he sabotages Christian's helicopter, Charlie Tango, causing it to crash in the forest near Mount St. Helens, but Christian survives. The next night, Jack watches them celebrate Christian's birthday from across the lake at their home. 2 months later, he breaks into Christian Grey's offices and hacks into Grey's personal files before firebombing the servers. He then contacts his former coworker Liz and uses the threat of releasing their sex tape to have her get into a car chase with Christian and Anna from the countryside into downtown Seattle. What the point of that was remains unknown because Anna manages to shake her off in traffic. A week and a half after the bombing, he steals an elevator maintenance van, outfits it with fake license plates, and uses the van and I guess the tools in it to gain access to the elevator at Escala, which gives him access to the apartment where he hides in the closet with a kitchen knife until Anna comes home. He then tries to kidnap Anna at knife point, but is incapacitated by her personal security and arrested by police who find a note in the van that says, "You owe me a life." A few weeks later, he is granted bail set at $500,000, which he pays. The next day, Jack is released from custody and with the help of Liz, immediately kidnaps Christian's sister Mia and tries to ransom her for $5 million, but is thwarted when Anna shoots him in the leg with a gun, and also the cops arrive and arrest him. So, It's maybe a little weird and pointless to interrogate the inner life of a one-dimensional character, though it's just as weird that Jack starts as Anna's antagonist, but we're assured that no, he actually already hated Christian before Christian got him fired, and everything with Anna is basically pure coincidence. This is why the baby plotline feels so weird. It doesn't really matter because Anna doesn't really want anything. The last thing she wanted was a career of her own, so Christian bought her a publishing company. Since then, she's pretty much been on autopilot. Part of what makes a thriller great is watching a convoluted plan come together. A good thriller has a plan that's complicated and maybe even a little bit wacky, but there's this deep satisfaction from watching it all fall into place. This is not that. Jack's scheme is less of a plan and more of a series of disconnected twists that made good cliffhangers for a serial fanfiction that was being written with an end goal but no plan. The longer you think about it, the worse it gets. I mean, for one, all the individual parts are just absurd on their own merits. A woman who works in human resources gets into a high-speed chase through traffic for no discernible reason. A fiction editor sabotages a private helicopter and firebombs a server after stealing personal files that have no purpose or value in their own right. Now, if you want to talk about one of the clearest examples of backfill, where a writer has addressed a problem in their writing not by going back and making changes to the earlier parts of the text, but by explaining things after the fact, we need to talk about Link. The ultimate antagonist of the 50 Shades book, the puppet master at the middle of it all, is a man named Link, or Mr. Lincoln. He's only mentioned in the books about 5 times total, depending on how you count, and even the fan wiki considers him so superfluous to the story that he isn't even given an entry in the list of minor characters. An added scene at the end of the unrated cut of the film refers to him as John Lincoln, so the movies eventually gave him a first name, but he's not in the theatrical cut at all. Even in the extended version, he's only in 2 scenes in Freed, one where he's introduced and one where he's arrested. And you know what? I'm hard-pressed to decide which is worse storytelling. Having an epilogue that amounts to, oh yeah, this guy here, he totally did it. He did it all because reasons. And also he did it by funding this other guy who wanted to destroy Christian's life for completely unrelated reasons. Or having an epilogue that leaves you with the absurd conclusion that a fiction editor would have the means, skill, and opportunity to sabotage a helicopter in an incredibly precise way such that it would still work but would fail after several hours of flight, infiltrate the high-security areas of an office tower belonging to a notoriously paranoid billionaire to plant a James Bond-style bomb, steal a car, forge a fake license plate, break into the home of aforementioned billionaire at a point when he has explicitly raised security, and just pay $500,000 in bail. And if you think I'm being a little thin with motivation here, this is about all that exists. Basically, Link found out about Christian's relationship with Elena, and then they got a divorce. But also he was abusing her, so they were probably going to get a divorce anyway. Oh, look, there's that thread again where people become doms because of unresolved trauma. Joy. But that's it. That's the sum total of Link as he appears in both book and film. And again, the only reason that the books have a secret puppet master villain in the first place is because Mitchell needed to explain how Jack suddenly had the resources to both get and pay bail when he's being charged with arson, grand theft auto, breaking and entering, and attempted kidnapping. The funny thing is that this was really easy to fix. Just make Elena the actual villain. From a filmmaking perspective, this movie just makes the previous movie all the more confusing because it's not like they were adapting 50 Shades Darker before 50 Shades Freed was written. The books were done. You could read the whole thing and know how it ends and work towards a conclusion instead of ending 50 Shades Darker on the same abrupt, I have no idea where I'm going with this note that Mitchell did when she finished Master of the Universe in 2010. I don't know why they didn't make that change, why they decided to try and do a literal adaptation and then cut it for something just as bad. The only answer I can posit is that reading the books, the books are very defensive of Elena. So keep in mind that Christian's framing of problems and conflicts is almost always taken as true or superior or justified. Christian consistently goes to bat for Elena. Whenever Anna does get to voice some criticism of her, Christian always defends Elena, and the final landing point in the book is Christian saying that maybe a sexual relationship between a middle-aged woman and a 15-year-old boy isn't a great idea, but they were both wrong, and they'd still be friends, but Anna doesn't like Elena, so he's willing to let that friendship go. It's messed up. In conclusion, 50 Shades of Grey is a land of contrasts, or as the natives call it, maze. It's corny, is what I'm saying. The books are and remain a contentious piece of literature for the way they muddy the line between kink and abuse, replicating and reinforcing abusive and potentially deadly relationship dynamics. The movies are a nominal thematic improvement, but despite good changes to characterization and some light plot restructuring, the movies ultimately hew too close to the books and in turn inherit almost all the original structural problems. While the first movie shows a surprising amount of creative talent and effort, the second and third are notably devoid of creative energy, with long stretches where the lead actors seem irritated to still be there. Anyway, the movie denouements with a montage, which is up there with a dance number in the pantheon of, we didn't know quite how to end this one, but really, the critical thing is that Twilight Saga Breaking Dawn Part 2 ended with a little musical montage, so 50 Shades has to end with a musical montage. To quote fellow critic Jenny Nicholson, at least in Twilight, those movies escalated to an insane degree, so it was like, look how far they've come. In this one, they're just married now. It's the same. But you know what? I'm going to disagree with that. Look at how far they've come. Look at how far we've all come.
Not some company he's acquired. I'm not the cracker who was his mother. You know, you're topping from the bottom. He murmurs against my lips. I don't understand what he's talking about. Charlie Tango, she's a Eurocopter EC135, the safest in its class. Dios mío, double crap, me and my two left.
Now, there is one part of the whole fan fiction and books that I've only incidentally mentioned up to this point, and that's the straight ripoff of Midnight Sun, which was the version of Twilight told from Edward's perspective that Stephanie Meyer scrapped in 2008 after some test chapters were leaked to the internet. During the writing of Master of the Universe, Mitchell included several side chapters as bonus content on her website, including a few that were just parallels of existing chapters told from Edward's point of view. One of these was included at the end of 50 Shades Freed and is basically chapters 2 and 3 of 50 Shades of Grey, but from Christian's perspective. In June 2015, Grey, 50 Shades of Grey from Christian's perspective, was released. Now, this actually poses an interesting opportunity, especially since the book was being developed in parallel to the first film and released only a few months afterwards. Conceptually, retelling the story from Christian's point of view provides an opportunity to address and incorporate criticisms, maybe even going as far as straight up retconning elements that didn't work. Most interestingly, since it is now Christian doing the telling, it's potentially a chance to recharacterize Christian via his internal monologue, maybe bring him more in line with Jamie Dornan's performance of the character, rather than how the character would appear from a strict reading of the originals. It's essentially a third chance to adapt her own story. I mean, surely it would be comical if a movie came out and was commended for trying to make the abusive monster of Christian Grey into someone at least conceptually likable, And then the next book just doubled down on all of Christian's worst behaviors, indicating not just compulsion in his actions, but malice and forethought, right? Clearly, sensibly, Erica Mitchell is going to seize this opportunity to paint a picture of a character who is in conflict with his own evil and isn't just an abuser and rapist.
I'm not knowledgeable, Anastasia. I just know what I like. And I like you. Some more. I nod towards the bottle on the table.
Please?
I fetch the champagne and refill her cup. She regards me suspiciously. She knows I'm plying her with alcohol.
Nope.
Baby, it's gonna take more than a malfunctioning 135 to keep me away from you.
135?